What is going on, y'all? Addy Narang here from LocksDFS.com, and I'm going to be bringing you this Week 7 edition of Addy's Action. For those of y'all who are new here, may not know what Addy's Action is. Addy's Action is essentially a weekly video that I produce on the LocksDFS YouTube channel, where I go over a few of my favorite low-owned plays. You could say GPP plays, but as I mentioned in every video, I do believe that a lot of these plays I'm going to be talking about, especially a few of the guys that I'm talking about in this video, are going to have a healthy amount of cash game playability as well. And so they're not just going to be, off the wall 1% type plays, because it doesn't really help many people to go ahead and like throw out random names like that. I want you guys to be able to plug these guys into your cash game lineup on DraftKings or FanDuel and have some real success with it. So that's the goal of this video. And I'm really excited about this week because it is shaping up to be a fairly chalky week. So I got some good plays that we can, zig where everyone else zags and try and get some low-owned gems this week. But before I get into that, if you guys do want to win a free NFL or NBA season pass, as you guys know, we run the same giveaway on this channel every single week. All you got to do is leave a like, leave a comment, and make sure you're subscribed to this YouTube channel. And you'll win a free season pass of your choice. That can be either NFL or NBA. We announce the winner of that every week on our Thursday Night Football Showdown video that Christian and I do. But yeah, as you guys know, I am from LocksDFS.com. We provide some of the best NFL and NBA content. It's real personal. You get access to our NBA, NFL Slack chat, as well as our showdown breakdowns, our lock sheets, our articles, all that good stuff. We kept the price low. We're not really trying to get rich off of this, more so just trying to build a community of, like-minded DFS players that we can, just talk about every slate and just, share our experiences and help each other get better. So that's what we're trying to do over here. If you are interested, you can check that out at locksdfs.com. And if you want to win or have a chance to win a free season pass, like I said, like, subscribe, comment, you're good to go. But yeah, so let's do a quick lineup review before we get into this slate. So this is my week 6 team. As you guys can see, this is the $250 double up, which is typically the biggest double up I play in every week. It's been good up until now. I was 6-0 in it, cast every single week, or I should say 5-0 in it, cast every single week. Now we're 5-1 because, as you can see, I finished 130th, top 100 get paid. The team sort of just didn't work out, but I'm happy with the plays. I wish Matt Bryant hit that extra point so I could get some OT from Julio Jones, Fitz, and Kyler Murray. I wish Jared Goff didn't overthrow Gerald Everett on a 50-yard touchdown towards the end of the game. But, those are just little things here and there. I'm happy with the process. Probably should have played Austin Hooper. That's the one thing that kind of bothered me, that I didn't just sort of eat that chalk at tight end. Because tight end's been real interesting this year. And even this video, when you go through ownership, there's really like 4 or maybe 5 playable tight ends like every single week. It's never really that deep. So it makes a lot of sense just to sort of eat the chalk at that position, especially when it's a guy like Austin Hooper versus Arizona in that spot. Probably should have done that. Was kind of kicking myself, but I was still able to recoup like 80% of my entry fees. So even though we'll chalk it up as an L, bringing me to 5-1, at least it wasn't a full L. We're still able to, keep fighting for another day. So with that being said, let's jump into this slate because I'm really excited about this one. As you guys know, we always start this by going over a few of the guys who are projecting to be chalky at each position and then going to the guy that I like who's a bit underowned. So let's start at quarterback. At quarterback, the highest on QB right now coming in is Matt Ryan. Following that, we got the potential shootout in Seattle with Lamar Jackson and Russell Wilson. Then we got Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Deshaun Watson after that, Daniel Jones after that, and then the guy that I want to talk about, which is Jared Goff. So yeah, before I dived into this, really dived into this ownership and dived into some, other sites who they're talking about, I was expecting Jared Goff to come in much, much higher in this ownership ranking. And I still have a feeling he might come Sunday because this is just such a good spot. And we're talking about nearly all of his pass game weapons, potentially his running backs, potentially 2 of his running backs. Yet no one's really mentioning him. I mean, for him to come in as like an 8th or 9th highest owned quarterback is pretty staggering in this spot. So let's get into why he's such a good play. So obviously, I think what's going to keep his ownership down is just how bad he's been in his last, maybe dozen starts. He's got a 60% passing rating, 6.7 yards per attempt, throwing more interceptions than touchdowns. But prior to that, it was almost 9 yards per attempt, 66% completion rating, 33 to 7 touchdown to interception ratio. Just way, way better. So he is in this little bit of an extended funk. But I do trust, despite people kind of, bagging on Sean McVay and his play calling tendencies and him tending to get just sort of stifled by his own defense. I believe in adjustments. I believe he'll be able to make some decent adjustments. And this is as good of a matchup as you could possibly ask for any quarterback. Just asked Kyler Murray last week. I played him that week. Just asked Deshaun Watson last week. I played him that week. I mean, just quarterback versus Atlanta are just as straightforward as it gets. So I'm pretty surprised to see his ownership come out this low. The main reason that it's such a good spot for him is that if you go to defensive line, it's on Football Outsider, look at the adjusted sack rate for all 32 teams, you'll see Atlanta come in at dead last by a healthy margin. They've only generated 5 sacks on the entire year and getting pressure at a 3.1% clip as their adjusted sack rate, which is just like god awful. It's so bad. And despite what, the deficiency in this Rams offense has been their pass protection, but despite being, allowing 12 sacks on the year, it is sort of indicative of just how much they're dropping back. Like Jared Goff dropped back 68 times or something versus Tampa Bay. He dropped back close to another 50 times in the next matchup. I forgot who they were playing against, where they were trailing. Let's just pull it up. He dropped back 68 times versus Tampa Bay and almost 50 times versus Seattle. So those are going to naturally inflate sack numbers. But as far as his adjusted sack rate, this Rams offensive line is actually giving him some fairly decent protection. And they don't even have to be on their A game versus this defensively inept Atlanta pass rush. In addition to that, I mean, this Atlanta Falcons defense is missing so many key pieces. They're missing Desmond Trufant, who is their top cornerback, despite him having a pretty rough year prior to getting injured. They're starting Kendall Sheffield, who is just a 4th-round rookie, just not, he's not a solidified NFL player yet. Opposing Isaiah Oliver, who's probably been the worst cornerback in football the past few weeks. Cooper Kupp, Brandon Cooks, Robert Woods, Gerald Everett, Todd Gurley, they all have amazing matchups as far as the pass game goes. And Jared Goff just got an abundance of weapons to target. It's a massive, high-paced game. I mean, the Rams are 2nd overall in seconds neutral pace of play. Atlanta ranks 10th overall. When they're leading by 7, the Rams are still 16th in pace of play. And Atlanta actually bumps up all the way to 2nd. So it's not a spot where we're going to have to really worry about Atlanta getting out to a lead and sort of running the ball with Devontae Freeman and sort of draining the clock out. It's just not something they do. They still pass over 60% of the time, even when they're leading. So it's just a really, really good spot for Jared Goff here. Excuse me. And he's someone that you can stack. He's someone that you can double stack if you want to go like Kupp, Gurley, depending on what the news comes out with. Excuse me. Depending what the news comes out with Todd Gurley, what his sort of workload looks like come Sunday morning is definitely a potential double stack. You can go with 2 wide receivers. You can go with a wide receiver and a tight end. Just because every single one of these guys has a good matchup, there's no limit to how you can stack with Jared Goff. So if he's going to come in this low owned, I'm going to be all over him, even though I love to take, a rushing quarterback, a guy like Lamar Jackson, or a guy like Kyler Murray, who kind of has like a 60-yard rushing floor almost, which is just, you're starting with a rushing touchdown right there, which is huge. And Jared Goff obviously doesn't have that, but this is a guy who we've seen obviously pass in the 50s and 60s. If this game shoots out and he passes that many times, he is definitely a candidate to go over 500 yards. And if he gets in the end zone a few times, it's just going to be icing on the cake, even if he throws a couple picks along the way or whatever. Love Jared Goff here at quarterback. And with that being said, let's move on to running back. So running back, first let's go over the high-owned guys. We're going to start with the highest projected on running back, and that's Leonard Fournette, followed by Saquon Barkley, Dalvin Cook, Chris Carson, Marlon Mack, Todd Gurley, Devontae Freeman, Kerryon Johnson. That's a bit low for Kerryon Johnson, but it's a tough matchup. Latavius Murray, Carlos Hyde, David Johnson. And I still haven't read this guy's name. Josh Jacobs, Joe Mixon. And there we go. No, Tevin Coleman, and there we go, Derrick Henry. Way after that, that's the guy I want to talk about. Again, it's Saturday night, but I do expect that ownership to come up come Sunday. Seeing him coming in at 5% on DraftKings is just way too low at this price point. He's 5.8K. It's an awesome matchup for him versus Chargers defense that's giving up just under 5 yards per carry. It's about 4.7 on the season. They're going to be missing a ton of key defensive pieces. Three of their top four defensive line starters. Melvin Ingram is doubtful as of Friday, so he's probably not going to play. Justin Jones, who's their starting defensive tackle, he's out. Brandon Mebane, who's also their starting defensive tackle, he's out. And I mean, we know the Titans benched Mariota last week for Ryan Tannehill. They're not going to be dropping, they're not going to be dropping back and letting Ryan Tannehill sling the ball around. They're going to be handing the ball right in Derrick Henry's gut, and he's going to probably just run up for probably 20 minimal. I mean, they're going to give him, 20 minimum touches on the ground. He's got underrated receiving upside, having multiple targets in most his games. I mean, even last week, 3 targets. And then week 2, he had 3 targets. Week 3, he had 2 targets. So he's got multiple targets in 4 out of 6 games. He's definitely underrated as far as what people associate Derrick Henry's pass game upside with. We've seen them like to utilize him in the screen game, where he can definitely have a lot of success with his run after catch ability. And it's good because we just saw the Titans lose 16-0 to Denver. So if you are worried a little bit about negative game script, just know in that game that they lost 16-0 to Denver. Derrick Henry still got 16 touches to Dion Lewis's 4. So Dion Lewis is essentially out of the game plan for these guys, and they're just going to be living and dying by Derrick Henry and their defense. And for 5.8K, a guy who has 30 touch upside if things go right, versus a Chargers team that just sort of looked bad. Even with them getting a bit healthier, they just look bad with how much they're trying to force Melvin Gordon, as opposed to just sort of spreading it out and using their dynamic pass game weapons. So I could see the Titans trying to keep that dynamic passing game off the field, control the clock. It will be a slow-paced game, but ideally the guy that's slowing it down is going to be a guy like Derrick Henry, who's just getting carry after carry, 7 yards, 8 yards, and then rumbles for a touchdown or 100 yards or something like that. So definitely interested in him at 5.8K, and if this ownership is just criminal, I'll be all over him if he's coming in at 5% owned. So yeah, let's move on to wide receiver. So this is a guy who, hold up. All right. So this is a game, I should say, not a guy. We'll get into that. But this is a game that I feel like is a very sneaky shootout that I think people are starting to get on as we progress throughout the week. But starting this week, no one was really on this game as a shootout. But as we move forward, it's sort of developed into one. And that's going to be this this Ravens Seattle game. Opened at a 49.5 total, has since been bet down to 49. That's not really much line movement either way. A little bit of movement on the Ravens, but these are two pass funnel defenses, and what pass funnels are is defenses that are really good at stopping the run and pretty incompetent at stopping the pass, and that fits. And both these defenses fit the bill on that. Both these defenses are great run defense, and both these defenses are bottom 10 pass defenses. So this is a game that could easily shoot out. So the guy, before I get into that, let's talk about the high-owned wide receivers. Ty coming in at 40%, really high. I mean, I'll be underweight on that. Allen Lazard, Julio Jones, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, DJ Chark, Tyler Lockett, John Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, Larry Fitzgerald, Brandon Cooks, Calvin Ridley, Adam Thielen, Kenny Golladay, Tyler Boyd. I won't keep going on because his name hasn't even come up yet, and that is DK Metcalf. So a few reasons why I like DK Metcalf so much. So first, let's go over to airyards.com. He ranks second on the team in weighted opportunity rating, behind Tyler Lockett and ahead of Will Dissly. He leads him in ADOT. He leads him in air yards just slightly over Tyler Lockett. And he leads him in ADOT at 15.1. That's average depth of target. That's an important note here because the Ravens have allowed the 5th most pass plays of over 15 yards in in the league. They do run around 73 plays a game, which is quite a bit. So it is a little bit of a pace-up spot for this Seattle offense as well. And in addition to all of this, the guy who's third in weighted opportunity rating is Will Dissly. And as we know, he got some non-contact long-term knee injury that I'm forgetting, like an Achilles or something. You guys can let me know in the comments. I'm blanking. But the thing is, Will Dissly was Russell Wilson's favorite red zone target by far. But DK Metcalf was not that far behind with 7 end zone targets of his own. And we can expect that number to go up. I mean, he's a big body. He can jump. He's strong. He's fast. He kind of sort of fits the mold of everything you're looking for in an end zone target. And when you got a guy like Russell Wilson throwing you the ball, there's a high percentage of those end zone targets that are going to be converted to touchdowns, especially because DK Metcalf has shown that, he's a pretty talented wide receiver. He's a diverse route runner, as opposed to just, that straight line speed that he's obviously showcased in like the combine and college and stuff like that. But this is a matchup. We saw a team sort of similar to the Seahawks as far as their personnel matchup with the Ravens last week in the Bengals. And we saw them shadow Tyler Boyd in the slot with Marlon Humphrey, which was really interesting to me because a lot of times teams don't shadow their top cornerback in the slot. But the Ravens did show that they are willing to do that. So that is something that seems kind of obvious that they're going to have to do on Tyler Lockett, given that the rest of their pass game, or I should say the rest of their secondary isn't that good. I mean, they did acquire Marcus Peters, who is a little bit overrated. But regardless, he is an upgrade to their sort of deficient cornerback personnel. I mean, they're missing their best cornerback, Jimmy Smith. Without him, they've allowed just under 300 yards passing per game. That's 291.2. They also lost Tony Jefferson and his backup, Deshaun Elliott, who are both their starting safeties, or who was the starting safety and then the backup starting safety. So they're both out. That's not going to help with those deep balls to DK Metcalf. You could most definitely see some miscommunication in Marcus Peters' first week. It's definitely a spot where they could struggle. And if this game shoots out, I love DK Metcalf to have a big piece of it. And if he goes off, I mean, he just doesn't seem like a guy that people are too high on playing in DFS just because Russell Wilson at any given game could throw the ball like 25 times. And if he gets, a 20% target share, which is a little bit up from his current 16% if you factor in Will Dissly being out and you up his about 4%. 20% is still only 5 targets if Russell Wilson throws the ball 25 times. But if this game shoots out and he's going to get a 20% target share with upside for more and Russell Wilson throws the ball 40 times, now you're looking at 8 targets for a guy like DK Metcalf with upside at double digit. And if a guy like DK Metcalf is going to get double digit targets, he's going to be more than fantasy relevant because of the nature of those targets being deep balls and end zone targets, which are the two most valuable types of targets a wide receiver can get. So really interested in him at a really, really cheap price. He's coming in at 4.8K, I believe. Too cheap. I'm going to be interested in him, especially at this crazy low ownership. So yeah, let's move on to tight end. Now, as I mentioned a little bit earlier in this video, tight end just been sort of interesting this season. There's only been like 4 or 5 playable guys in cash almost every week, and this week's really no different. I mean, the chalk guys that are coming in is Evan Ingram, followed by Mark Andrews, Darren Waller, Austin Hooper, Hunter Henry, George Kittle after that. And then the guy I'm a bit interested in here is Gerald Everett at 3.7K. This is a week where you might have to be spending or allocating a decent amount of salary to, quarterback, running back with guys like Saquon, Dalvin Cook, wide receiver with guys like Julio, Cooper Kupp. They're going to have to save somewhere. So I like the price on a guy like Hunter Henry at 4K. I love the spot for Mark Andrews if this game turns into a shootout at 4.9K. I think Mark Andrews ran back with DK Metcalf is a super, super fun GPP stack. Even though Mark Andrews will be fairly chalky. GPP more on the DK Metcalf side. But a guy like Gerald Everett at 3.7K, that's what I want to talk about in this video. So as I mentioned when I was tilting my last week's lineup, Gerald Everett did get overthrown on a wide open 50-yard touchdown pass at close to the end of the game. It might have been the last play of the game almost. So take that for what you will, but it was there. The opportunity was there. He got targeted 5 times, which makes the past 3 games of double-digit targets. He sort of emerged as the tight end one in this offense, even though Tyler Higbee does have a safe role in this offense. It's pretty much Gerald Everett's position. And it's a great spot for him. As I mentioned, every single one of these pass catchers is in such an awesome spot. But since losing Keanu Neal, who is their all-pro strong safety, opposing tight ends have caught 19 of 23 targets for 218 yards and 3 touchdowns over his last 4 games versus Atlanta. Atlanta's always been a team that's been fairly willing to concede passes over the middle as opposed to limiting or in lieu of limiting the deep ball. And so that's something that definitely benefits a guy like Gerald Everett. In addition to this, he's a dog. I mean, he's fast, he's big, he's strong, he's an athletic tight end, and he looks good this year every time he gets the ball in his hands. We've seen his upside in this 11 target, 136-yard game he had versus Seattle. He didn't even get in the end zone in that game. So if he gets in the end zone, this guy is a guy with massive upside. And if you can pair up Gerald Everett and Jared Goff, when most people are going to be playing guys like Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods, and if you can pair up, Jared Goff, Gerald Everett, and somehow get them at, sub 12% combined ownership, and you can get a touchdown or 2 out of Gerald Everett, you're just in such an insane leverage spot versus everyone else with Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. It just makes for a good GPP play in relation to how highly owned these Rams wide receivers are projected to be. I mean, I think Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods were like 2 of the top 5 receivers I read when I was going over their ownership projections. So interested in Gerald Everett here at this price. Not sure if I'll be getting him into my lineups. But if I land on a 3.7K tight end, I don't want to move anything else to get up to a guy like, Andrews or maybe Henry. I mean, even though I'm fairly, I think Henry might be a bit, I think he might come in a bit chalkier than he should be, and I think Gerald Everett might be coming in a bit less chalky than he should be when you consider, the pace of play of this Rams game versus this Titans game. Just how many plays that this Rams offense should run versus this Chargers offense, the matchup. It's fairly similar between Gerald Everett and Hunter Henry. And we could see Hunter Henry come in, especially after his massive game in prime time last week, we could see him come in way more highly on than Gerald Everett. So I'll be looking at him if I land around sub 4K for tight end. And yeah, so with that all being said, guys, thank you so much for checking out this video. As always, you guys' love, support, it means a lot on these videos. I know I'll post them late, so it still means a lot that you guys tune in on your Saturday night or Sunday morning to check it out. As always, I'll just mention it one more time. We do run that same giveaway. All you got to do is leave a like, leave a comment, and make sure you're subscribed, and you'll be entered into winning a free NFL or NBA season pass of your choice. So yeah, with that all being said, guys, best of luck this week 7. I hope y'all run real pure, take something down, and then I will see you guys back here for week 8 of Addy's action. Peace.